It's a wedding of what I experienced growing up with blues and jazz in Chicago with my feeling about my ancestry in Romania, specifically Moldavia. So I make those connections. I move like a snail in Holland. I'm like a hermit. I just write my music very quietly. And I hardly go out except to the store. I'm like an iguana here, you know. I go to New York and it gets all frenzied and wild and everybody's killing themselves to pay the rents because the landlords are a bunch of gonnips and thieves and stealing from everybody, man. But New York's still a dynamic place and I love to be there. But after I've had my quiet time in Holland, you know, I can do my 2 or 3 months here and then I go for a month in New York and I let it all out. I was born in June. I'm a Gemini, June 14th, 1937 in Chicago. Father bought a new house, small house, but a modest house on Drake Avenue on the northwest part of Chicago off Peterson Avenue, not far from Skokie. It was really suburban, of course, at that time. My older brother, Sherwin, 4 years my senior, was looking after me all the time when I was a kid. Anyway, from 5 or 6 years old, we had a little Stark baby grand piano in the living room on Drake Avenue, so at 5 or 6 years old, I reached up on the Stark piano and I started trying to work out boogie-woogie lines, and my mother heard that. She said, oh, he's going to get into that jazz stuff. Uh-oh, he's going to have problems with that. I better get him a real teacher here. She was a classical teacher herself, but I dropped classical music in high school, and I wanted to go after chicks and, you know, and be a macho superstar on the track team. Up to that point, I was, you know, just on the periphery of jazz, listened to a bit of Dave Brubeck and Lee Konitz and all that. Then I realized, well, if I go to the South Side in my teens, I go to the South Side, I can really hear some music. And I started hearing the great black creators on the South Side of Chicago. I'm hearing all about this Charlie Parker. Now, what's the difference between Lee Konitz and Charlie Parker? And I didn't get it at first. So I had to make a cultural identification. It turns out Lee Konitz is Jewish, and I'm Jewish, and I can hear his music readily. But I couldn't hear Charlie Parker because I had no black experience. So I got this record of Lee Konitz playing Don't Blame Me. Now, Charlie Parker playing Don't Blame Me. What is that? Whew. Wow, I'm telling you, man. I mean, I dig Lee Konitz. He's great, but there's something about that black experience, which is just so special. And then I started hanging out, you know, went to places like Second City, of course, where I heard the great improvisational actors, and heard Ahmad Jamal in the South Side of Chicago. I heard Clifford Brown with Max Roach. I was 19 years old. I heard all this great stuff. But Chicago, you know, Chicago was always Second City. And you had to be top, but you didn't go anywhere. There was no real recognition being in Chicago. It was like the Midwest. So I wasn't ready for New York yet, so I just went to California for a while and got in the bop scene for a while and, you know, started playing a little bit out there. But I started hearing all this great free music, improvised music. The latest stuff was coming out of New York via radio. Martin Williams had a great jazz program, and I started hearing guys. I heard a little bit of Cecil Ornette. I heard Jackie Byard, fantastic piano player. Eric Dolphy, of course. This is where it's at. This is where the music is going, and this is where it's at. I got to go to New York. Within 6 months, I met Alan Silva, and we formed this thing called the Freeform Improvisation Ensemble. And we didn't write a chart. We didn't write a piece of music for 2.5 years. It was all totally spontaneous combustion music. And we lived together, so we had that closeness, you know. Totally egoless music, really. I estimate we had 12 concerts, 10, 12 concerts, 2.5 years, and maybe we had a total of 50 people at those concerts. Modesty, huh? So we didn't care. We were burning up with the music, man. We had no money to eat or nothing, but we were burning up with the music. We found a gold mine, a cache. And we were all celebrating every day of our life. It was like 4th of July, you know. Every day was an explosion with that music. Short fuse, I call it short fuse, long explosion music. The music ideas, it came through us. We were instruments rather than musicians. The muse was playing us. Leighton Kerner, who was a top classical music, contemporary classical music critic for the Village Voice, gave us a half a page. We played in a coffee shop in Harlem, and maybe we had 5 people with the waitress and Leighton Kerner. Immediately I get a phone call from Gunther Schuller, and you know, poet laureate, conductor, composer, head of New England Conservatory. He calls me up and he says, "Who's the composer? Who's the conductor?" I said, "God." We had we didn't need a director, man. We just, like we're doing now, spontaneous combustion. And that's what the 5 of us or 4 of us were doing all the time. So we would just do stand-up composition, stand-up improvisation. And like it says in the Kabbalah, if you throw the rock in the water, you get the circles happen of their own accord of energy. So we just try to follow that spiral wherever it went. That's pi energy, by the way. A great composer like Bach, that's what he did. He did theme and variation. It's one of the oldest things in classical music. And he improvised like hell. Mozart, Bartok was a great improviser. All these guys, Beethoven, they just followed the circles of energy. And later maybe they wrote it down. So we were doing that without a conductor, without a composer, without a written note for 2.5, almost 3 years. We joined the Jazz Composers Guild in 1964, and that's where we got some critical recognition. Alan went on his own. Alan Silva, he went with Cecil Taylor at one point for a while, and then Frank Wright, a great band in Europe with Frank Wright. And I had my first quartet, which recorded for ESP in 1965. ESP Records was the label at the time, recording a lot of this avant music. Okay, we got some notoriety, we got on the map. I got invited to come here and play by Willem Breuker. And he'd heard about my guild experiences and my first recordings on ESP Records in New York. But it all came as a result of coming out of that freeform improvisation ensemble. That explosion was fantastic. But on the other hand, you had to put back the pieces. A lot of people didn't survive that music, you know. If you didn't have the vehicle or the instrument for that explosion, you get short-circuited like a bad wiring system. The energy would have been trapped. I know a lot of beautiful artists from that period, not only musicians, painters, you know, they didn't make it. If you start doing drugs or something with that, or heavy alcohol with that, it'll kill you. And that's when I met Satchidananda, who taught me how to put the pieces back together through yoga, meditation, hatha yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, all the different yogas together. He calls it integral yoga. He picked up the pieces. He just initiates something. He'll touch your third eye or something, touch this lobe up here on your top of your head or something, and you feel an opening like a flower. It was a magic. He said, "I'm just planting a seed. It's not going to grow unless you put water on it. I'm just planting a seed here, so you have to do the work. Here's your mantra. Go." You know, I studied with him very closely for 2.5 years, and then I was 69, and I was ready to go to Europe. Since the early 70s, I studied a lot of classical Indian music with a great sitar master from India, Jamaluddin Bhartiya, whose father and his father's father all the way back were masters of that music form. And from coming from all this, you know, I look like Che Guevara, you know, and went from what I call a turtle nervous breakdown. It came on very slowly here in Holland after the wild years of the 60s in New York. Came here to rest. I couldn't move for a month, and I couldn't go back to, after a month, I couldn't go back to the piano and play that screaming free jazz stuff anymore. Forget it, I couldn't do it. I started noodling like East European things coming from my ancestors instinctively, you know. And that turned into, I said, well, these things have a specific form. What is that form? I said, well, there's the Greek modes, there's 7 modes or 8 modes, whatever it is, but there's something much deeper even. And sure enough, I found Indian music. Some of the oldest stuff in the world. Found myself a sitar master, Mr. Bhartia, who's hopefully still around in Bombay. He was here for a number of years and he went back. And I learned a lot. I carried a sitar case for 5 years. We formed a group called the East-West Trio. And in the process of learning that music, it went from total outer space to inner space. I found out that I was noodling ragas, not only East European scales, but ragas where they perhaps came from. Those gypsy scales in East Europe, after all, the gypsies came from India. It's all, you know, understanding, going further and further back. And Mr. Bhartia gave me some gems. You know, he taught me the rain raga, the sun raga, Odwi ragas. One day he said, we're going to do, today, Baba, we do Odwi raga. I said, what's that? 5 notes. Now, I used to play 5 notes in 5 milliseconds, you know, with the outer space music. And this guy said, 5 notes, Baba, we play 5 notes. I said, okay, for you, I slow down 5 minutes. He says, maybe 5 hours, Baba. He says, you can play them in the different registers of the piano, I accept that, but no other notes, that's it. And I want you to make music. I want your soul to come out in those 5 notes. The economy of it all really showed me about spaces and incredible things in music that I had never thought about. I've always been curious about East European roots music. I've had a long history of dealing with, for example, the music of Bartok. So I was already primed for this, you know. Hadn't made a direct connection in my brain about my own Jewish roots yet. But what happened about 1989, met this kid, Israeli kid. He was half Israeli, half Dutch. Iftach Bar, his name is. He was a kind of folk singer who plays guitar, or is a folk singer and plays guitar. He was curious about my music. So I played him some stuff. He says, well, it's jazzy, it's nice, but what's your music? I said, what? I said, you're Jewish, aren't you? What's your music? He really confronted me. I said, this is my music, man. What are you, snot-nosed kid? What do you know? He's like 19, 20 years old at the time. I said, what do you know, man? This is my music. He said, no, this is not your music. I said, oh, then you're going to tell me what my music is. After 30 years or 35 years of professional, blah, blah, what's this kid going to tell me, man? So he says, I'll play you. You want me to play you some music for your music? And he started playing some beautiful Israeli stuff I'd never heard. Giora Feidman, put on a record of Giora Feidman. It was beautiful stuff. So I start saying, yeah, man, that's what I'm doing. I'm just going back in my own roots. It's like you discover the Kabbalah after you're 40. You know, same story. Here I was 50 already, you know. So then I heard about this wonderful clarinetist who knew the whole klezmer repertoire. Marcel Solomon. Comes from an old Jewish family in Amsterdam, and was also kind of a student of Giora Feidman. Said, well, there's the connection. I got to get hold of this guy. So we sat down at the bargaining table together. I said, listen, I can teach you about improvisation and jazz, but I need to know about klezmer and Jewish music. He says, you got a deal. Let's work. And we formed the group, the first klezmoka. A short time after that, we got Larry Fishkind on tuba, who's still with us. Not Marcel anymore, but then I got Roberto, who comes from an old Sephardic family, so we got the Sephardic connection, not only the Ashkenazic connection. And then I also brought my old buddy Perry Robinson in the band in '94. We made 5, 6 recordings since that time, and a short time after that, we got Lior Cooperberg. He's a young Israeli, like, early 30s. Been here a few years from Israel. So he's got that music in his genes. It's instinctive. He's played 1,000 bar mitzvahs and weddings, and he wants to get out of that circuit and do some real creative stuff. So he was just like he fell right into the music. Also at the same time, or just before that, I got Patricia Bisons. She got into Brecht and Weil and all kind of other folk music, German folk songs. But she also had a penchant for Jewish music. So I invited her to join Klezmokum in about 93 or 94, at the same time that Perry joined us. The gem of this current band, of course, for me, is working with Marek Bawata. Now, he's an old friend of Patricia, and they've done some folk music together in Eastern Europe. He's from Krakow. Patricia said, why don't you call Marek Bawata or write him an email? Who's this guy? He's got a great range. He's 3.5, maybe 4 octaves. He can sing like a soprano. He can sing like a bass. He scats like Charlie Parker. He puts on, he goes and does one time he's with the Chicago Symphony doing a Catholic oratorio. That's his own background. 2 days later, he's back in Amsterdam with me with a yarmulke on his head in the synagogue. He can do all of it. He chants like a chazan, like a rabbi. Our group Klezmokum is more of a Jewish research orchestra than anything else. That's what one reviewer called us. We're not a klezmer band. We're not playing Hava Nagila at weddings and things like that. We're not interested to do that. I love the way you can take contemporary music, some of the latest avant ideas, and still keep the soul in the music. That's what we try to do. So our last thing called Ancient and Newer Roots, which is on this subject, has some very old themes in there, but of course we give them, again, the old wine in new bottles. What do we have to say about that in this time and not recreate the museum? Both my parents are from East Europe origins. I'm interested in the Balkan influence in the music. The old Romanian stuff is influenced by Turkish stuff, so the odd rhythm things from their occupation there. And of course, there's a Sephardic tradition also influenced by Turkey, because a lot of the Sephardic Jews during the Inquisition went to Turkey as well as up here in Amsterdam. Spinoza and his friends came here, but some others went to Turkey. So all those kind of influence come to play here in the music. And yet, we also, I can't deny that I've been under the influence of Bela Bartok for a long time, or Charles Ives, or Stravinsky or something. All that's there too. And not to mention, of course, the greats like Monk and Bird and in the jazz world, Dizzy, Ahmad Jamal. All that stuff is Randy Weston. There's all kind of stuff in my music. I think we were the first band in the last 25 years to really focus on modern jazz with klezmer roots and other Jewish Sephardic roots, etc. The feeling of old culture and what that has to say in this time. '93 went to Romania again. I've been there before during Ceausescu, and then in '93 I went there and found the synagogue where my grandparents had worshipped, and my great-grandparents, and who knows how far back. That synagogue is there over 200 years. And man, I sat in those pews in the synagogue, in those chairs where my ancestors sat. And oh boy, what an experience, man. I was meditating there. They were talking to me with these heavy East European accents in my ears. I think, he's a good boy, he came home, he's a good boy. Of course, as a Jew, we're fascinated with that, still fascinated with that whole Hitlerian Holocaust experience. And there's still remnants of it in the psyche of the people that have been really hurt, burned by it, you can say. I found some really poignant texts and music from that period. The themes come out of 19th century Jewish composers who modestly or otherwise, or the manuscripts got lost, the names are not even known. So I worked with this traditional material and added my own compositional material to it. This music is very poignant. It's part of a suite. I've combined two pieces, Ghetto and Song for the Unknown Partisan, which is a lullaby.
My child, sleep quietly this time, till the night allows a moon to shine. In the sky the stars appear. Child, don't look upon my tears. Sleep, my child, sleep quietly this time. Your dear father is forever lost, taken from us, bitter is the cost. On the street was dragged and tied, in a gas chamber he died. Sleep, my child, sleep quietly this time. One fine day, with conviction you lead the way. Say that people must be free, rouse mankind and let them see that there is a better, freer world. Den Himmel, Glanz und Stern, guck nicht, Kind, auf meine Tränen. Schlaf, mein Kind, schlaf wieder
Been writing some new stuff for the duo recording with Perry.
Yeah.
maybe one or two of those pieces.
Could you try that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Co-compositions by myself and Sil Rolig, my friend in Cologne. She's very talented. She didn't know anything about Jewish music, but she went to the library in Cologne and got some Jewish scales out of a library and started working with them. So they made some pieces and sent them to me. Our relationship has been put to the test because the lady lives almost 300 kilometers away from here, and we see each other very rarely, but, you know, we still collaborate, and the collaborations are intense. This is one of our latest collaborations called Song for My Friend Burton, written by Zilka Rolik, and I arranged it.